Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we're going to talk about breathwork for optimum health, peak performance, and ultimate potential. And our guest today is Dan Brulé. He is the author of Just Breathe, Mastering Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond, now in 10 languages, by the way, that is. He is also the founder and director of the International Center for Breathwork and the Breathing Festival. Dan is a renowned pioneer in the field of breathwork and one of the originators of breath therapy. Dan was first among the original group of internationally certified rebirthers and is a master of prana yoga, the Hindu science of breath, and Qigong, or Qigong, as some people would say, Chinese medical breathing exercises. He's the owner of breathmastery.com and the leader of the worldwide spiritual breathing movement. Dan has personally trained more than 250,000 people in over 66 countries to use breath and breathing for healing, growth, and change in body, mind, and spirit. His clients and students include Olympic athletes, elite warriors, and martial artists, leading psychotherapists, medical experts, and corporate executives. Among his students and clients are peak performers, including self-improvement guru Tony Robbins, Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine, who was on this podcast, Army Ranger General James Cook, world record holder and free diving champion Stig Severinsen, Oren Klaff of Intersectional Capital, author of The Flip the Script, and many others. Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
The first principle in my philosophy for health, the Awesome Health System, which is an acronym which I teach all our students, is air, breath. And it's such an overlooked thing. Like, most people are worried about their health. They're thinking about diet. And I always go for these principles. Well, how long can you go without food? Long time, a couple months. How long can you go without water? A week, maybe. How long can you go without breath? Well, unless you're able to enter into the breathless state, which is a pretty heady accomplishment, a noble goal, but few achieve. Breathing needs to be the most important focus, probably on health, vitality, brain states, and almost all people in high pressure, peak performance areas learn this in order to maintain that. So how did you get involved? Like I want to know your backstory. We know all the celebrity stuff. Like how did you decide, or how did you end up becoming a world-renowned breathing expert?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a legend in my own mind, so that's probably enough.
Aren't we all?
It was never really a choice. It's like you gradually discover over your life that you were born with a certain purpose, a certain mission, and I guess maybe not everybody wakes up to that, but I had no choice. Life just kept sticking my nose in the breath, no matter how hard I tried to do other things. Everything just kept bringing me back to the breath. And starting in kindergarten, in Catholic school, and, having the pastor of the church come and talk about the book of Genesis, how God took the dust of the earth, formed the body of man, breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. I mean, I was 5 years old. That was the most exciting thing I had ever heard. I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't excited. It's like, God is breathing into us. And I don't know. I must have gotten too animated because my memory is really dim about that. But I can remember hands on my shoulders trying to push me back in my chair and tapping me on the head, trying to calm me down. And so I don't know, something lit up in me as a really small child around this idea that there's something about the breath that is magical, mystical, amazing, ultimate, I don't know, something. And then, getting the wind knocked out of me as a kid in school, just like constantly, one thing after another. And then my first job was, I had a couple of near drowning experiences as a teenager. I'm gasping for breath, choking for breath. I was holding, I was the one in first grade having breath holding contests in the schoolyard. I was the organizer of breath holding. It's just always been something I just couldn't escape. I wasn't meant to ignore. And then when I became an X-ray technician, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be, just heal everybody. I wanted to be a priest first, but too many things I liked, priests weren't allowed to do. So I had to take that off my list. And I got kicked out of the altar boys, when I was 12 years old. That was like, God, if I can't even make the altar boys, I'll never make the cut for a priest. I mean, everything just was so funny in church. Everything made me laugh. It was just something about the vibe anyway. And then when I wanted to be a doctor, but 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, I just wanted to get the heck out. So I took a 2-year X-ray technician, which kind of got me into the hospital. I felt like I was at least got my foot in the door. And so X-ray technician was just 2 years. And one of the easiest X-rays to take is a chest X-ray. And when you take a chest X-ray, you tell the person, take in a deep breath, hold it, click, you take the picture. And I gave those same simple instructions to probably a couple of thousand people over the next year or two. And everybody did something different. The muscles they used, the expression on their face, what they went through to accomplish a full breath, what they felt was a full breath. And it seemed to me, it started being very obvious that a person's relationship to life, their relationship to their body, is expressed and reflected in their relationship to the breath. And the more I studied a person's breathing, the more I learned about what was going on in their head and what kind of physical or emotional issues. It seemed, the breath just started speaking to me somehow. And then I got a deferment to go into the military. It was the Vietnam era. And my number was up. And so instead of getting drafted, I joined the Navy. And they gave me a deferment so that I could do my 2 years of X-ray school before I went into the military. So I went into the military as an X-ray technician. And and then once I got in the military, I actually, I'm a diver. So I did underwater rescue. I mixed gases. I worked a recompression chamber. I held a record in the Navy for breath holding, from 1970 to 76, I guess, unless somebody didn't tell me. And so I don't know, it was just that everything was always pulling me back to the breath. And the last time that the breath was completely taken away from me, I drowned and I was resuscitated. And those first few breaths that I took, I wasn't breathing air. I was breathing bubbles of light. I was breathing this ecstatic energy. And so I'm breathing in these bubbles of light instead of molecules of air. And they were bursting everywhere inside of me. And it was ecstatic. It was orgasmic. It was just, I could never, ever, something happened and I could never do anything else except go deeper into breathing. And so I've been a missionary for the breath for 50 years. I've been to, like you said, 67 countries. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I'd be in 70 countries by now. Just studying and teaching. If I heard of anybody who was teaching breathing, I was kissing their feet or breathing down their neck. And I just don't know what else to do with my life.
It's a couple of so many interesting points just to start on there. What, when you talked about that incident where that you were resuscitated, what constituted that situation? What happened?
Well, I was a diver. I had equipment failure. I was with a buddy. We were tied together. We were about 140 feet. And my equipment failed. My regulator just stopped working. To this day, we don't know what the heck happened. But we were all trained. I came up. I pulled him to my face. It was dark down there, and I gave him the signal. No air, no air. And he looked at me like a confused puppy dog. And I'm starting to really panic. And I got no air. I got no air. And you're not supposed to take the other person's regulator, but I just wanted to take his regular out of his mouth. And finally, and I had my hand on top of his. And he finally let go, and I just barely put it back in my mouth, and he pulled it back. And I went, oh man, I am on my own here. I slipped the knot, and I took off to the surface on my own. And I over exhaled. As I was going in, I'm trying to keep my cool. Okay, don't get ahead of your bubbles. Don't get ahead of your bubbles. Like stay. And I exhaled myself out of breath. I over exhaled, and I was just stuck. And I thought, oh God, okay, I'm gone. And then I saw the bottom of the boat, just a silhouette, faint bottom of the boat. And it's interesting. Remember what your last thought is, because I think it takes you into your next whatever. And the last thought was, oh, I'm going to make it. And it was almost, I didn't think it. It was just kind of a thought that came like, oh, I'm going to make it. And just then, I just went out, like lens on a camera. I got tunnel vision, and I blacked out. And I woke up in the bottom of the boat getting resuscitated. And it's really cool because I was in this kind of surreal thing, and I suddenly realized I was dreaming or something, and there were these giant black lips that were like sucking my face, like giant. And I suddenly realized that it was my buddy Duck. He wasn't the guy I dove with. He was a topside tender, and he had been resuscitating me. And he was looking at me, and the sun was behind his head, and it looked like he had a halo. And I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, wow, he looks so beautiful. And he was smiling. He was so happy. And I'm thinking, well, he never looked so happy. And then he said, so Doc, are you going to breathe? And I thought, breathe? Like, and as soon as I thought about breathing and started to breathe, everything just slammed shut. And my effort, my desire, my need to breathe just shut everything down. And then I went dark again. And then the next thing what woke me up was the weirdness of it. It was this weird sound. And it was such a weird sound that it kind of like shook me awake in a way. And what is that weird sound? And I realized, wait, it's coming from me. And it was this like, and my body was trying to breathe. And when I realized, oh, I'm breathing, then my breath, I don't know, some part of me relaxed or something. And then everything opened up. And then I had that miraculous bubbles of light, ecstatic. And everything made me laugh. Everything made me cry. They actually medevaced me out. I flew out in a helicopter because they thought, whoa, man, something happened, brain damage, too long without oxygen or something.
Right.
Yeah. But I was in an ecstatic state. And most of it left me, but a little piece just refused to linger. And the more I went to India, I went to China, I became a spiritual seeker, and that little residue kind of accumulated more and more. And so the breath has become my way of turning people on to the spirit of life. And once you're connected to that, you don't need me, you don't need an expert, you don't need a doctor, you don't need anybody. You're connected to God, and so I'm a freaking missionary for the breath. That's it.
I love that, and you kind of illustrated something in that experiential reality, and that there's, what I'm gathering from what you're stating there's a complete separation from you, the identifier, with you, the body, in this point. Mm-hmm. Like there's a consciousness here, but then which is independent of the physicality here. And then breath seems to be that chord somehow that's working. And of course, this is very well illustrated in many of the Eastern philosophical tests on spiritual advancement, and whether that's through the Indian traditions or some of the Chinese traditions or the Sufi traditions, or things that have emerged throughout history. Yet so many people miss this point. So you went on this journey, this quest, this epic, you have this radical, first there's a predisposition for breath and a career in breath. And then, on a professional level, on a more of a westernized culture. But then you have this kind of, obviously what some people would say a traumatic experience, but for you was transcendent. What was it like? like, can you explain the drive then to understand that and expand it and to become, what was going on with you then? Like, how did that impact your life moving forward? And when did you kind of like fully embrace maybe teaching this, advocating this to other people?
It takes repetitive contact or hits. I didn't get it. I mean, I really didn't get it. It got me in a way. And then it takes a few repeated from different angles and different ways that keeps taking you to the same state somehow. And you start to realize that, wait a minute, there's like an infinite number of ways to get to this. And so, wanting to grow, I think, is important. Having the intention to just, what is possible? What's the greatest, what is my greatest possibility? I should be leaning into that. And I think if you're not, maybe you're going to miss a lot. So just that desire to transcend that, there's always something more. There's got to be more. That urge, that drive, maybe it's evolution. I don't know. But that major experience I had was a bigger experience of milder ones that I had along the way. And it was like almost life just kept hitting me harder. I still didn't get it. Until finally, you haul off and whack me with a baseball bat and I finally get it, So I think it's like it's a series of invitations, opportunities, moments of awakening. I ended up in prison. My last duty station in the military was actually in confinement. And then the miracle came out of that. I got complete pardon. They busted me. I was a medical person, so I was dispensing drugs, both legal and illegal. And I got busted, and they had probably, I think, 22 counts. Each of them had 3 to 5 years. It was a nightmare scenario. I was young and dumb and full of, the expression. And so I brought it upon myself. And I ended up with a pretrial agreement for 3 years. And my lawyers convinced me, look, Dan, 120 or 3, what do you think? And so, all right, I swallowed the idea of 3, and because they told me with good behavior, I could get out in 18 months. So I thought, okay, 18 months, I guess I can manage it. But the miracle happened, and I actually got clemency. I got a full pardon after 69 days. All my rank restored, my rights, everything. It was just like a freaking miracle out of nowhere. I to this day, I don't understand. Somebody liked me in Washington. I have no idea. But it came from cleaning a toilet, and this was my other big awakening experience. It was bigger than the drowning experience. And I guess because my body wasn't having to process the experience, it wasn't traumatic. So I think that allowed more of the transcendent experience to come through. Because if you're, struggling to survive, you get a piece of it, but it's like those hierarchy, what was in Abraham Maslow, the hierarchy of needs. If you're still starving to death and you don't have food or shelter, it's hard to be spiritual, It's hard to be loving and compassionate to other people and have higher motivations and stuff. So maybe it's part of that too as we grow. But I had to give up on the idea of good behavior because I was kind of a unique prisoner for these guards. I had commendations. I was a medical person. I had ribbons. I was, and so I was like a sport for them, a hobby. How miserable can we make this guy's life? I was just their target, and they were just doing everything they could to, piss me off, whatever. And then they succeeded at one point. I'm going to forget it. The guy spit on my food before he slid it through my cell. And I just lost it. And then I became a violent prisoner. At first, I was an uncooperative prisoner because when I first came in and I realized they wanted you to work, I said, work? I'm already in jail. What are you going to do? Put me in jail if I don't work? You work. I ain't working. And then this event happened where I kind of, instead of grabbing the food, I grabbed this guy's arm and I pulled him in on the bars with his face, and I was just, I just snapped. And then it was like all the anger of my life came out on this poor bastard. This one guy just happened to be at the wrong place, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And he got every ounce of bitterness and resentment and anger he's the only person I have ever been violent with in my entire life, really and truly. But he got
Probably
it all.
didn't spit on anybody's food ever again.
Well, he probably didn't. And then, I don't know, something happened that release, that rage, whatever it was, something in me, I don't know. It was therapeutic, I guess. Not for him, but for me.
What's interesting is when I've studied the autobiographies, and even in my own personal spiritual growth, there comes these points which don't fit the New Age model of spirituality. It's like you come up, and I think it was Carl Jung that said you really don't know yourself until you've experienced your shadow and fully embraced it. And we have these aspects of ourself, and oftentimes I've seen it in myself as well as a number of my friends who have made a commitment to kind of spiritual development, that suddenly you can fall into unusual circumstances, including strange psychological conditions. And I've read about this before, where, uncontrollable grief or uncontrollable anger or rage can come out of people. And a lot of people don't know that in traditions, they took these people off to a monastery. So if, the guy's in a cave losing his marbles because he's working out karma of 30 lifetimes, it's okay. He's not causing more trouble than it's worth. Do you feel that there's these aspects, and I know they call them samsaras, in the karmic seeds that sometimes lie dormant until you hit a certain level? And people think it's like, oh, it's all rainbows and unicorns, but my experience is that real spiritual endeavor often evokes even more variety or variance in the condition of life. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very painful experiences crack us open. If you survive, if it doesn't break your spirit, like Holocaust victims, prisoners of war, they were beat to death, but their spirit wasn't broken. They survived. And their ability to experience pleasure has also been cracked open. So the pain cracks us open to greater pleasure and joy. And I have no doubt that somebody who's been in a Holocaust, a victim, they enjoy an average cup of tea much more than the average person. They don't know it. Other people don't know it because it's just an experience, but it's a real thing. So pain can crack us open in the same way that joy can crack us open. And that's why I love breath work, because you can accomplish with breath work what it would take. You hit bottom. Let's say you're a drug addict or whatever, and you just finally hit bottom. And not until you totally hit bottom are you really ready to move, right? So desperation is a very good motivator for awakening, but inspiration is an even better motivator. And so if we could give people this ecstatic experience where they feel at one with everyone, and there's no problems, and there's such clarity, and there's this joy and this love, if they could have that kind of experience, it cracks them open, and they can tolerate more pain. They can be in the world and deal with everyday stresses much easier than the average person. And so that's how that prison thing led me to that kind of awakening, because after this sort of peak rage thing, something in me softened, and I stopped wanting to resist and fight and be angry and whatever. It's just something shifted. And so the code in the prison, in the jail, was that if you wanted to work, you could be with all the other prisoners. Well, in the first place, I didn't want to be with a bunch of freaking prisoners. I'm not kind of guys I would hang out with, even if I wasn't in prison. But, so I said, well, and if you don't work, then you got to be all alone in the block of the cell. I said, well, that's perfect. I'd rather be alone, reading, studying. I took a speed reading course before I went in. I knew I was going to be in for a couple of years. And I figured I'm going to memorize the 100 section of the library. I'm going to read every philosophy, every psychology book, every book on religion in the 100 section. So I was prepared to just spend the next couple of years reading and studying and improving myself. And so being alone fit that perfectly. But at some point I just said, okay, I'm ready to work. And so they were really suspicious. They thought, okay, when we open this guy's cell, he's going to like attack us like an animal, you know. So they sent 4 guards, armed guards, to supervise me the first time I went to work. And they led them down I was the only person on this particular cell block. And there was nobody else in all the, maybe a dozen cells, I forget how many, 8 or 9, 2 rows now, and a hall. And at the end of that hall was this door. And for 17 days, the first 17 days I'm in jail, it's driving me nuts. What the hell is behind that door? What is that door? It's like I was fantasizing, I'm dreaming, or what it could be. And so then when they took me out of my cell, instead of marching me outside, we turned around and we started marching down the corridor. And I'm thinking, holy cow, I'm going to find out what's behind that door. And I was like a child. I was suddenly so happy. It really it was weird that I was feeling this amazing, like, wow, I'm getting so joyful. And when we opened the door, it was an old toilet that they hadn't used in 20 years. And they threw all these old dirty mops and buckets and crap. They never inspected that place. So when the inspectors came to the prison, nobody ever looked in there. So that was where all the Marine guards just threw all garbage and hid everything. And it was smelly and rotten and disgusting. So that was like their joke. Oh, you want to work? Yeah, we got a job for you, Doc. And so, well, I'll tell you, I was so happy. There's real joy in being productive. And it doesn't matter what when you are contributing, making the world a better place, even if you're just cleaning a damn toilet, there's an organic pleasure in that. And it's not philosophical. I really felt that, like, holy cow. And it was so bad that I got through cleaning and that place was immaculate. It was beautiful. And I still had an hour left. And I was like, shit. And so I looked down at the drain in the urinal and I thought, okay, I got an hour left. I'm going to spit shine that brass drain in the bottom of the urinal. And I was on my hands and knees and that was it. I was just into making this thing so polished, so shiny that, God would think, wow, what a great job. And the weirdest thing is that it was, like a crisscross graded thing. And in a little tiny square, I could see my reflection and it kind of stunned me. The clarity, it was like my perception kind of opened. And the closer I look, I could see the pores on my skin. I hadn't shaved in 17 days. It was the first time I had a beard growing the whole time I was in the military. And then I saw the guards standing behind me. I mean, perfect, the perceptual. And I saw a crack in the wall going up to the ceiling. And it's like all of my perceptions just opened in that moment. And my heart opened. And when my heart opened, it was like, oh my God, I just loved everything, everybody. I was crying, I was laughing, I was weeping, I was wailing. This love just poured through me and I needed to hug somebody. And so I turned around and I stepped towards the guard and he jumped back in fear. And it shocked me. It was like, he's afraid. Can't you see that this is pure love? I mean, I'm not going to hurt. There's no chance I could ever hurt anybody ever again. And he couldn't feel it. He couldn't see it. And I felt such deep sadness in that moment. I went from feeling unlimited joy to feeling bottomless sadness. It was like the biggest up-down cycle I had ever felt in my whole life. I mean, I went into the pits, this sadness for everybody on the planet who just doesn't recognize love, who's just afraid of the thing that they want most, and they're most afraid of it. It was just, and then I kind of balanced out and I was walking back to my cell. I really felt like I was floating. I weren't sure. I think they had me under my armpits. I think they were helping me walk. I don't know if I collapsed or what, but I got back in my cell and it was like, I'm home. I mean, this place that I hated with the bars and the cement blocks, and they took my sheet away because I was a suicide risk, and in this bare freaking cell. And I was so happy, and it looked so damn perfect. The bricks were all so perfect. The bars, the flat ones, the round ones, the geometry was like magnificent. I was having orgasms about the perfection of geometry. It was just weird. And I could hang on the bars and they'd hold me up and they were cool on my face. And I'm freaking making love to the bars of my cell. And I thought, oh man, Dan, you've done too much LSD. You're totally gone off the deep end here. But I couldn't stop it. And then I realized the psychiatrist was in my cell. And I knew this guy. He was a doctor. I was a corpsman. I met him 24 times. I sent patients. I knew his whole life story. He was a miserable bastard. They passed him over for promotions 4 times. His wife was screwing everybody on the base. His kid was on drugs. I know, because I was selling his kid drugs and I was screwing his wife. I mean, and now he's a psychiatrist. He's got a psychiatry hat on, and he's asking me these stupid questions right out of the same book that I would be using if I was evaluating somebody for sanity. Do you know what day it is? Who's the president of the United States? What month? And every time he asked me one of those questions, it was more ridiculous. It made me laugh more than ever. And I could feel his pain behind his uniform. He was a lost, miserable soul and sad and depleted and depressed. And he's just acting like he's got his shit together. And when I pinned him on that, I said, look, what, don't worry about me, brother. I am so good. What about you? What's your wife doing right now? What about your kid? What about you? And he just started weeping and wailing. I'm holding him in my arms like a baby. And then the guards were really afraid of me, because when the psychiatrist left and he was all snivels and disjointed and everything, they go, oh man, what happened to him? And I don't know, something happened in me. And I wanted everybody to feel it, but I didn't have any way to do it, because the only way that I had this experience was when I drowned. Not too many people volunteer for drowning in the hopes that they will awaken to something beautiful. You could become a drug dealer, get put to jail and clean the toilet, work for me, but there weren't people signing up for that seminar either. And so it wasn't until I got out of the military, and I got out very quickly. They gave me a clemency. I got honorable discharge, and bada bing, bada boom, I was back in the world. I took a year off. I was on the beach in Hawaii just trying to remember who I was. And then I thought, I ain't going to try to remember who I am. I'm just going to go forward. I don't want to recover and go back to who I was. I want this to be a launching pad into being some who, somehow, some way that's more. And so I didn't know what to do with my life. And I had 10 years of educational benefits coming out of the Vietnam era. So I decided to major in using VA benefits. And so I was a full-time student, University of Massachusetts. And I found a mentor there. On the beach, when I got out of the military, I was living on the beach on the Big Island in Hawaii, paradise. And I found this woman, and she had a book called The Handbook to Higher Consciousness by Ken Keyes Jr. And it was an orange book with a picture of a handprint on it. And he was a Westerner who kind of put all the Eastern spiritual stuff into Western language. And he just enlightened me, honestly. The guy enlightened me. And he was a paraplegic. He was a quadriplegic. And we had a joke among us corpsmen that if, we had guys that had their legs shot off or they were paralyzed for life. And we used to joke among us, like dark humor. Look, if that ever happens to me, shoot me, okay? I'll shoot you, you shoot me, right? Okay, good. Because none of us wanted to live a life like that. And then I read this guy's book, and in the back of his book, there was a cassette tape. And when I listened to him, his voice was so peaceful and so joyful and so loving. And I could feel the vibrations just through his voice. And I got to meet this guy. And when I met him, what a shock. He was a quadriplegic. And I thought, how can this guy be so happy? I mean, he's living my nightmare. And so it was just, he just awakened me. And then when I got to the University of Massachusetts, and I got back to, after my year off in Hawaii there, and I went into the bookstore, I'm trying to decide what courses to take. His book was on the shelf. And I thought, oh my God, somebody's using this book in a university course. I'm taking this guy's course. And his name was Milton Young. He became my mentor. He taught transpersonal education, transpersonal psychology, human development and learning. He was a devotee of Sai Baba. And he was the first real meditator that I met. So that teacher, first of all, Milton Young, who became my mentor at the university, turned me on to rebirthing. I met him in the parking lot one morning. He was floating. He was giddy. And I said, Milt, you look a little weird today. And he said, oh, it was just rebirth. You probably like it. It's about breathing. Everybody on the campus knew I was a breathing fanatic. And so he says, yeah, I'll tell you what, go learn it. Write me a paper. I'll give you 6 credits. That's half of a semester. And so I was able to get my VA benefits for breathing. And so that's when I discovered rebirthing. And in the first 5 or 10 minutes of my first breathing session, everything, all the stress from my entire 5 years in the military melted off of me. The clouds were whiter, the sky was bluer. For the first time, I felt like I was anchored in that state that before I had just been kind of a peak state, and I couldn't even speak, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything. I was so like a bliss mini, like goo goo gaga, yeah, useless. But when I had that first experience, wow, I could contain this state and I could walk and talk. And so it was like I discovered the secret, the power of the breath. And I've been teaching it, rebirthing ever since. I have written an article about breath work every month since that June of 1976, when I had my first rebirthing session. Haven't missed a month yet.
That's amazing. Couple things to unpack there, and then we'll kind of move forward. I'm a big fan of Dr. David Hawkins' work and his map of consciousness, and he describes many of the states. I used to go see David at his events for many years with a large group of people. I used to bring everybody down there. He was a remarkable individual. And one of the things he talks about specifically is in people who have what, quote unquote, a mystic experience, a transcendent experience, where they kind of shoot up in their consciousness for whatever reasons. Sometimes it happens unimagined. Sometimes these things happen suddenly. And yes, there's a readjustment to life, and that takes a period of time. You read about Eckhart Tolle, spent a couple of years on the bench. David Hawkins, he spent years out in the woods where nobody knew him, walked away from his psychiatric practice. I think there was a Ramana Maharishi, didn't speak for a few years. And so I think a lot of people are under a misnomer in spiritual work, what I call New Ageism. And that is, when I advance my consciousness, I'm going to be rich and famous and find the love of my life and all of this sort of stuff. It's kind of like an amplification of the ego desires as opposed to letting go of.
Yeah.
When you know that, and Hawkins talks about this because what happens is you lose your mind, essentially. Yeah. These are mind stuff. Yeah. What was that like for the people around you when suddenly it's like, okay, Dan, you've really done it this time. You're hanging out on the beach, you're floating on this thing, or you're in this kind of what was that like for maybe your friends, your family, former colleagues? How did you make that adjustment? And because the inward person is okay, but the outer world is kind of like, hey man, we've lost Dan. What was that like for you?
Yeah, fortunately, my family never really understood. But what really helped was my 2 sons, my children. A good example is my grandmother, who, when I went to India, she's a devout Catholic. And, when I went to India, oh my God, he shaved his head, he's wearing mala beads, and he took the kids with them. And it's like, it's the Antichrist. I mean, she was really worried about me and worried about us. But I overheard her one time, just trying to get comfortable with her confusion. And, all the old ladies get together. Well, what does your grandson do? Oh, well, he's a doctor. What does your grandson do? Oh, he works. And my poor grandmother just never knew what to say about me. And so she goes, well, I don't know. I guess it's really good because if you look at his children, they're like happier than anyone in the family. They're healthier than all the other grandchildren. He's doing very well in his life, even though he doesn't seem to be making money. I don't know what he does for a job, but whatever, I guess whatever it is, it must be good. And when I overheard her saying that, I went, okay, she found her way to make peace with, even though she didn't understand it. And I think my other relatives were just quicker to get there. They gave up trying to understand me a long time ago. And so they just gave me unconditional love. And I think that has been a real gift in my life. And maybe not everybody gets that from their family. Maybe people put pressure. You should be this, you should do that, you shouldn't do it. And I never got any of that. I felt like I could do anything. I could go anywhere. My parents encouraged me to just, all right, whatever you love, go ahead and do it. Phew. And I think if it wasn't for that, I might have had a different path. I felt like, hey, I can always go home. In fact, my mother even told me once, she goes, Danny, you can rob a bank, you can kill somebody, but you can always come home. I will always love you. I was just like 14 years old, but when I heard that, it was like permission to go anywhere, do anything. And I knew I could always come back and I would get loved. And it gave me a sense of freedom, I think. And so that's what I teach. And safety, because if people really feel safe, they'll allow themselves to be free. And so those are my two rules around breathwork: freedom and safety, and the rest will come. And I have utter certainty about the safety. There's a lot of people teaching breathwork, and maybe they're doing a lot of crazy things that would be considered dangerous, but I have never had one negative experience in all of my 250,000 people. And I think that has to do with a genuine certainty, embodied safety of some kind. Otherwise, we're going to attract what we fear. And I'm a little concerned about breath workers because, well, I'm happy on one end because there's so many. Everybody's jumping on the breathing bandwagon these days. And they have their particular technique or their exercise or their approach or their method, and they want to make it theirs, and it's better than everybody else's. And that's like sibling rivalry. We grow out of that stuff someday. But I would like people to come into breath work at least cognizant of the real roots of breathing, which is spirituality. Spiritual breathing is the purpose. Now, I can teach you breathing. You can shave 2 strokes off your golf game. Fantastic. You're a mixed martial artist. I can help you, vent quicker in between rounds. There's a lot of ways you can use breath work, lift more weights, run faster, whatever. But I'm really into people who somehow sense that what's the ultimate, what's the great, let's aim for that. And we don't even know what that is. And if we could put it into words, we probably wouldn't have it. So it's this faith of some kind and trust in the flow of life and the perfection. And I don't think you can teach that. I think it has to grow in us somehow,
Beautifully said. Couple things, a side note, and then I want to get into the rebirthing thing. When I was 22, I went through a near-death experience, and in that experience changed my life, really transcended. And I remember coming back and being born again in a different body and going, oh, that Wade guy's gone. And somehow this is me, and I'm going to forget all that stuff in my past life. And here I am in this one. And I remember the process of starting the breath again. And then I snapped out of the situation, and suddenly I found myself back in this quantum reality. It felt like I jumped pathways, and it's the whole thing. But there was this sense of coming back into a new body and this rebirthing experience. And then a colleague of mine, when I was training a number of years later in Vancouver, I had a personal training business, and a colleague of mine who was a personal trainer initiated a rebirthing. He went to a course where he did a rebirthing experience. And I remember him coming to my juice bar. I had a little juice bar, and he was sharing with me the experience, and it was very profound for him. It caused a major shift. And in fact, he ended up leaving personal training, and one of his best clients, who I would come to the juice bar with him, I took on as my student, and we've developed a beautiful relationship since that time. We're friends to this day. But I was struck by how this rebirthing experience for him completely changed his life. And, he left his business, he went on to another path, said it was new thing. Can you explain to me, maybe we'll start here as one of your first endeavors in the breathing world, like this whole concept of rebirthing. What is it? Who does it? Why do people do it? What are some of these experiences, both what's perceived as positive internally, but may create life changes externally? Is that a common experience?
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's masszymes.com, and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Yeah. So rebirthing was called rebirthing just for the reason you mentioned. People did a session, they felt like they were in a new body. And so I think it has to do with trauma. So, in the first few moments of life, basic programs are laid down, and they're programs linked to trauma. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. The world is a dangerous place. I can't do it. It's too much. I must have done something wrong. I'm being punished. I just got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. We don't have words like this, but these are felt experiences, impressions, right? So, you're in a womb for a long time and everything is just given to you. Comes through your umbilical cord. You're a little microscopic creature and you're floating in an infinite ocean and you have no ego and you're experiencing exponential growth continuously. You don't have time to form an I, an ego. And you don't know where God leaves off and where you begin, and you don't know where your mother leaves off and where your body begins. She feels something and you feel it. You feel something and she feels it. And her body is filtering energy and light and sound from the world. And so you're in this protected place. And then birth starts, and we have this chemical explosion. All kinds of organs and systems are all coming online at the same time. And it's just like in this house, if I turn on every light and fan and bing, and then I turn the main switch on the house, I'm going to blow a fuse, right? So I shut everything off, then I put the main switch, and then I go around and I turn things on one at a time. We didn't have that chance to do that at birth, and something in us short-circuited. Something in us just got frazzled, fried, whatever. And most people never recover from their birth trauma. And so that's why rebirthing in the beginning was so powerful. People would remember and re-experience their birth. I remember my circumcision. I remember causing pain, my mother's pain, and thinking I felt guilty because I was causing my mother pain. These aren't words. These are just real impressions and feelings I had, right? And thoughts like, I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough. I must have done something wrong. There's something wrong with me. The world is a dangerous place. They shake you, they slap you, they stick things up your nose, and they straighten your spine after it's been curled up for 9 months. You've been in the dark. You come out into hospital, bright lights. The whole thing is so damn traumatic that most people lose touch with who they are, and they never quite get it all back. And so rebirthing sessions, in the early days, you went through 10 sessions, and layer by layer, you just work through all the trauma, all the negative impressions, turning them into positive affirmations. I am enough. I am safe. The universe is a safe place. I am loved. I deserve love. And so the work with affirmations and the work with breath work, they were together like from the beginning in the rebirthing movement. And then what you find is with each session, you're kind of removing layers and you're releasing shocks and traumas. And here's something I read and I heard recently that stopped me in my tracks. A serious emotional trauma causes just as much brain damage as a head injury. Let's just drink that in for a moment.
Wow.
A serious emotional trauma as a child causes literal brain damage that might as well be a head injury.
Wow.
So that's why that's our problem. And how do we go back to that original trauma and try to recover? And then all the little shocks and traumas we had along the way to retrieve our soul, to get back in touch with our spirit, with our energy. And Barnett Bain is a very good teacher, even though he doesn't do rebirthing or anything. Barnett Bain has a book called The Book of Doing and Being. He's a Hollywood producer, filmmaker, creative guy. He does workshops on creativity. He really understands this. He said, if you take a puppy away from its mother, you have severed an energetic bond, and the mother is not happy, and the baby feels what he calls, well, there's sensations of aliveness, overwhelming sensations of aliveness, but they are distressing, overwhelming feelings of aliveness, but they are feelings of aliveness nonetheless. And so if you're experiencing, you're a little baby and you had that energetic bond severed, and all you can do is cry, just like a little puppy. You bring it home for the first 3 nights, it cries all night. It's processing that energetic bond that was cut from its mother, and it takes a while. And so we had a similar trauma. And the only way to escape those horrible feelings is to leave our body, shut down. And when we're 3 years old or 4 or whatever, and the cognitive centers come online, then we add storytelling to that. Oh, I'm a bad boy. My mother doesn't like me, blah, blah, blah. And now when we have a powerful feeling in our body, we abandon ship. We leave our body, we go up into our head, and we're having a virtual experience, a conceptual experience, instead of a felt experience, instead of an actual experience. And the only way to get back into our body, and the only way to reconnect with that spirit, that creative spirit, is to get back in our body. The only way to get back in our body is to breathe. But when you breathe, you bring up all the feelings that frighten you out of your body. So now you're in a catch-22. Right. And there's no way around it except gentle or powerful or whatever it takes to breathe through all that crap and release all that stuff so you come back to who you really were. Otherwise, you're just piling more and more layers on throughout your life, So I think it's some kind of a phenomenon. It's that just away from who we are. And then we spend the rest of our lives, we know we're seekers of some kind. We know there's something more, there's something better. And people turn to drugs, they turn to sex, they turn to food, they turn to money, we're all trying to resolve that original something. And some ways work better than others. And breathing is a no-brainer. It works.
So let's talk about maybe some of the other techniques and things that you've developed and taught over the years since that initiation you got into rebirthing, and then moving on into some of the things that you're offering nowadays, because I guess there's so many areas that breath work entails and can do so anything. I remember Mark Devine talking on our podcast about how they did box breathing as part of their military training in high stress situations. Yep. I've heard high-level marksmen talk about breath work. I've heard about, emotional, traumatic teachers in psychology talking about connecting to breath, and then yoga instructors. So is there a hierarchy of breath? Is there a methodology that you've learned or a way of kind of putting these forth in a way that people can integrate at their pace or where they're at? Like how does this all fit together, I guess, with such a wide-ranging experience you have?
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, that's the question. It's the purpose of everything I do. First, we've got to simplify things, right? I'm very suspicious of complicated, difficult. I don't know. I'm really suspicious of that. So we got to make it simple.
Einstein said, if you can't explain something simply, you don't fully understand it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I agree completely. Yes. So I reduce it to the simplest, two simple basic aspects: breath awareness and conscious breathing. Breath awareness it's meditative awareness, it's mindfulness training, it's attention training, it's concentration training, it's what the Buddha, it's how the Buddha became a Buddha. He studied everything, he tried everything, he went everywhere, and after about 12 years of being a full-time seeker, he got to the point where he thought, there's nothing else that I can do. There's nobody else to study with. I've done everything that's humanly possible. He sat under a tree, and what did he do? He began to become aware of his breath, and that was his awakening. He realized, oh, look, the breath comes. Interesting. Oh, sensations, they come and they go. Aha. Oh, look, thoughts, they come and they go. Experiences, events, pains, pleasure, everything comes and goes. He discovered the impermanent nature of all of existence. And that was the key to his awakening. And he did it by simply giving up everything else and just becoming present with his breath, which is the moment-to-moment flow of life and spirit. Inspiration, expiration, respiration. The root word of that is spirit. He just became present to the movement of spirit in life, which was the movement of his breath in his body. And that cracked the door open. And pretty soon he realized, oh, even my sense of self comes and goes. The thing I call an I isn't really a thing at all. It's an operation. And so that's how powerful breath awareness is. It's how the Buddha became a Buddha. So that's the first step. And we just need to become more conscious, more aware. And you use your breath as the place to develop that developing of awareness. The more aware I am of my breath, the more aware I am, period. The more conscious I am of my breathing, the more conscious I become of my posture, my tone of voice, my reactions, my emotions, the feelings in my body, my situations around me. Awareness, once you crack it open and it starts expanding, it includes everything. So that's the first step. And that means you don't have to breathe in any special way. In fact, it's better if you didn't, because the one who decides how to breathe and what breathing technique to do is probably the one you want to get free of. Is probably the one that's in your way, and you don't want it in charge of your process. So we practice pure breath awareness, just being with what is as it is, and learn to do that. Be with your feelings as they are. Be with the world as it is. Be with your thoughts as they are. That ability to be with what is as it is, without trying to neurotically change it or fix it or control it or manage it or even understand it. I think that's the first step, and we keep coming back to that all the time. So you become aware of your breath, the sensations at the tip of your nose, the sensations of the air up into your sinuses. Track those sensations, experience the breath from the tip of your nose, from deeper in your nasal passages, up in your skull. Tune into the details and the sensations in your throat, the subtle sounds, the movement in the chest, the movement in the belly. You're meditating on your breath. You're meditating. Breath awareness, developing breath awareness, and that leads to awareness in general. So that's the first part. And so you don't need any practice. You don't need any. You just got to put the time in. Every day when you wake up in the morning, just maybe go to the toilet or whatever, but before you have your coffee or whatever, sit on the edge of your bed and just observe your breathing. Just feel it. Just become intimate with it. Just connect to it. Just observe it. Just listen to it. Just be with it. That's the first step. And maybe you don't need anything after that, because then the next step is conscious breathing. This is where you give the breath a certain intention, a certain quality, a certain pattern. You breathe in a certain pace or a certain rhythm, or now you're doing the breathing. So you got being breathed, breath awareness, and doing the breathing where you take over. And there's the dance. And the game is to get comfortable and not. Every yogi is a control freak. I'm a yogi, and so I can make fun of yogis. I'm a Catholic. I can make fun of Catholics. I got it right? Your average yogi is a freaking control freak. He wants to control every breath, every joint, every muscle, every organ, wants to control the stars, wants to control his destiny, wants to control everything. So that's half of the game. Half of the game is the opposite of that, surrendering, letting go. And if you don't build that into your lifestyle, you're going to miss all of the greatest potentials in life. We got to be able to swing from doing to being, from allowing to controlling. And so that's how I teach people to enter the breath. And so in the beginning, for example, I just use a sigh of relief and yawning, which everybody already knows. Nobody has to teach you how to yawn. You can trigger it if you want. And everybody knows what a sigh of relief is. So you just start doing those things more consciously. Do them as a meditation. Play with them, drill on them, train, exaggerate them. And you're gonna find yourself on a path of awakening. Because I left Swami Rama, living with the Himalayan masters, Science of Breath, Path of Fire and Light. He was down there in the Himalayan Institute in Honesdale, Pennsylvania for years. He was one of my teachers, beautiful teacher. And he was my teacher until one day when I liked visiting, I liked being with him. I liked learning from him. He was a very strict yogi. His mission in life was to preserve a tradition, pass on that tradition. That's not my mission in life. I'm a disruptor. I want to tear down every damn tradition, right? So we're very different, but I tolerated that difference. He always felt too Catholic to me. He reminded me of the Catholic priests and the rigid and the dogma and the rituals and so I was always kind of following him, but part of me was having to very consciously deal with my stuff around him. And it came to a head one day. I got up in the morning, and that little beautiful space between waking and sleeping, you got a choice. You can either just lean back into sleep, or you can lean into awakening. And for me, it's a very creative time. I get really good ideas very often in that space. So I like when I kind of wake up and I realize I'm there. And I got this amazing download, boom, beautiful, like aha freaking moment. And it came in the form of words. And it was, I can learn to breathe from the breath itself, that the breath is alive, that the breath is intelligent, that the breath is life, that the breath is intelligence. And I can learn to breathe from the breath itself. And I felt like one of those moments in Kane and Kung Fu in that TV series, Right. I couldn't wait to go see my master and tell him what I solved the Zen koan. I got it. I got it. I couldn't. And he was playing tennis. And he was a hell of a tennis player, by the way. He could have been a pro tennis player if he wanted to be. He kicked ass on the tennis court. But anyway, so he's playing tennis, and I'm just like bubbling, I'm boiling. I just can't wait to share this with him. And I'm imagining that when I do, he's going to go, "Oh, grasshopper, very good. You have now graduated. Go." But instead, he looked at me like I was the stupidest person he'd ever met. And he goes, "Can I learn how to get to the moon from the moon itself?" I went, no. And I walked back to my room and I went, well, I'm done with Swami Rama. I think I've gotten everything I could get from this teacher. Time to move on. Right. And that to me is it. I think I got the secret. We all have the same access. We all got the same connection to the same infinite spirit. I got my personal connection. You got yours. And if I am following anyone else's path, I am following the wrong path. But it's very scary to invent your own path in this world. Nobody's going to support you because they don't know what the hell you're talking about. They don't know where you're going. They think they're trying to pull you into what they believe is true. And hey, how can 10 million Buddhists be wrong? How can 10 million Christians be wrong? Who am I to think that I found the right way? Well, I found the right way for me, and you need to find the right way for you. But I think breathing is a key in helping us find that right way. So
one of the things that David Hawkins was famous for, and I always remember this from his teachings, was many are the meditators, few are the enlightened. And I do believe that there is benefit to maybe going down a systemic path of progressive initiation into whether it's martial arts or training. But there is the point, and this is what I think a lot of people don't understand in the guru-disciple relationship, or the mentor, the mentee, or the teacher and the student. In the guru, the traditional format of that is that which dispels life. The guy is is to provide a pathway based on the student to get them to God, but not to replace God. And I think a lot of people, and I think one of the traps of being the guru or being the teacher is that you want to dictate the path of the student. That's the hook. And then the hook for the student is when inner awareness starts to blossom forth, is to trust that and to separate from the teacher.
Yeah.
And this is the conundrum that emerges, I think, within all spiritual students or people who are following a pathway. And some people, you know, like I'm curious, because I mean, I think your kind of renegade free spirit nature was apparent, but there's power in that for people to give themselves license to break free. What happens as you go around the world and teach people, and people maybe hold you in a certain idea or a certain vein, and you become that teacher? How do you as a teacher of breath encourage the student to go their own way, regardless of how long or when they've been with you or all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I deliberately allow my inner to be visible. I piss and swear and fart and chicken. I don't want, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I try to turn it around as quickly as possible whenever it kind of happens, but it's kind of natural. And I understand that people, it's natural for us. I mean, when I was a little kid and didn't know how to walk, it took somebody else to keep encouraging and maybe even holding my hands while I did it for a while, and just cajoling and encouraging, and so we need each other. We really do. We need each other. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you go fast and you find something, you can't help but come back and tell your friends, right? So maybe that's it. I mean, I could have bowed out of this dimension a long time ago, but I want to take as many people with me. Maybe there's that bodhisattva kind of thing. You're just compelled, like Tony Robbins. I mean, I work with Tony, and this guy, if he learns something, he cannot tolerate not sharing it with somebody. He cannot learn something that helps him, and he's compelled to pull somebody into the room and teach it to him immediately. I love people like that, and that's part of my nature, that whatever we gain for our own benefit, we immediately think, wait a minute, this can benefit everybody, can it? Or at least anybody who's ready, and we should be willing. And heck, it's not a pretty spiritual idea that we're all connected, we're all one. That's my experience. And so I can't do violence to anybody without doing violence to me. And if we're all connected, I lift somebody else up, I'm being lifted up. And if we're all connected and I lift myself up, a whole bunch of other people are going to be lifted up because we're all connected. So it doesn't make any difference whether I'm taking care of myself or taking care of somebody else. It's the same game, But we got to be doing what we love. We can't be doing something because it's the right thing, it's the good thing, we should do it, blah, blah. We better be doing it because we love it. And it doesn't matter whether we get paid for it or not, or when anybody appreciates it or not. It's like the fragrance of a flower. A flower releases its fragrance. It doesn't care if a saint or a sinner sniffs it. The joy is in the releasing of the fragrance. And if nobody smells it, that's not bad either. So I tend to attract the same kind of people everywhere I go. So maybe I don't have an accurate view of people in the world. I attract people who want to grow, who want to learn, who have open hearts, and so that, to me, that's the world is populated by people like that. And I hear there are other people, but they ain't showing up at my seminars. So to me, they don't exist. All right.
That's beautiful. I can remember, I followed a very traditional path of yoga taught by Yogananda and pranayama and stuff. And it's been wonderful for me. And then ran into certain organizational issues that was pushing up against, similar to what you had described. And that's when I kind of prayed about it and ran into the Dr. Hawkins work. And he was very much like that. He would be very callous and rough and things like that and laugh about it. And he was totally not attached to other people's perception of him. And he said something that was really profound. And I think it's something important for Westerners to understand. He says, in the West, we celebrate sainthood, which is the perfection of the personality. In the East, they celebrate enlightenment, which is the transcendence of. And he talked about Nisargadatta Maharaj pounding the table and smoking cigars in his biddy shop, and he'd wander away and they'd drag him back. And, these type of, and I think even Yogananda talked about in his book, The Autobiography of Yogi, that he would meet these saints, and they all had some strange idiosyncrasy of the personality that didn't really match their divine perception. And some people would get turned off by it. But he said, no, I wasn't concerned about the personality. I wanted the divine chana, the energy of it, which you seem to have embraced in such a great level. What are some other things that you teach in, your course, Breath Mastery, Dan Brulé, Breath Mastery? You want to talk a little bit about your work in the world, what that's about, how people get access to it? Because anybody who listens to this interview, they're going to be excited. They're like, wow, man, could I feel like this on a day-to-day basis? How do I go about that? What's the process? How do I navigate all the complexities and pathways of breathing? And everybody's talking about and it seems your own experiences have led you to a great place. Can you talk about what your work in the world and how it serves?
Yeah. So we have an app that's about to come out, 5 years in the making. Oh my God. When we first, I was in South Africa, said, hey, let's create an app. I thought, his name is Dorian Cabral. He's a fitness guy. He owns some fitness centers. He's also a very devout Christian. And in his breathing session, he found God in the breath, basically. And a couple of weeks went by, and he called me and my partner there, Ilamanga, who's a doctor, a beautiful woman. He said, and he had it all laid out. He had figured out this app, and he wanted to turn my breathing teaching into an app, right? And so, and we identified 8 paths, which now actually there's 9. But so people come to breathing for physical health, physical well-being, and maybe, getting from unhealthy up to healthy, and getting from healthy to get more healthy. So that physical health and well-being. And so there are different breathing exercises and techniques that tweak your chemistry. You can affect brain rewiring, all kind of physiological benefits, biological, working with CO2 and nitrogen oxide and all the physiological benefits of breathing, right? Another path is psycho-spiritual, emotional healing, right? Many people come to breath work for that. Many people come to breath work just as a self-improvement, like another religion, like a modality for just personal growth. The more you learn about your breath, the more you learn about yourself. So personal growth. Another is like sports performance. A lot of people coming into breath work for sports and fitness performance, right? You learn to breathe, to have charisma, to control a room, to manage your emotions, manage your mental state, to focus, to connect better with people. So business. Another is what we call healing the healer, helping the helper. People who are in the healing and helping professions, breath work is something that they turn to take care of themselves, and it's something that they add into what they're doing to make what they're doing work better. And then there's creativity. People come into breath work, you're an artist, a singer, an actor, whatever. So for awakening creativity. And the eighth path is spirituality. Who am I? Why am I here? The big questions in life. And now we're going to add another path for children, because we've been doing a lot of work in schools around the world with kids. We have 150 countries through the UN that signed up with our breathing classroom that we created for the International Breathwork Foundation to train teachers to bring breathing techniques into the classroom, to start to give kids up level and down regulating skills and emotional management skills when they're still young, right? So those are all the paths, let's say, that people, why they come to breath work. And I like to start with very simple geometry. Start with a triangle breath. That is inhale, exhale, pause. Because that's it. I mean, what else is there to breathing? You got inhales, you got exhales, you got pauses. And that's it. It's not complicated, right? But when you do it consciously, and that breathing pattern, inhale, exhale, pause. Inhale, exhale, pause. That is how nature hardwired us to breathe. When a person is sitting at rest, relaxed, and this is how the breathing happens. Inhale, exhale, pause. So I encourage people to do that consciously, do it deliberately. Now you're coming into harmony with your nature. You're not doing some artificial, complicated breathing technique. Inhale for 4, hold for 12, exhale for 37. It's very simple, and it aligns you with how nature has already hardwired you to breathe. I think that's the safest entry point. But you do it as a meditation. And then you start practicing, play with that triangle. And the first place might be to extend the pause after the exhale and get comfortable with a bigger base on that triangle. And that pause after the exhale needs to be a comfort zone. So you inhale, exhale, and then just wait and relax and don't breathe. And relax and feel and meditate. And then observe the very first impulse to breathe and deliberately surrender to that. And then experience the inhale, experience the exhale, and go into that pause, right? That's a great place to start. It's a meditation. Or maybe you play with a different leg of the triangle. Maybe you make the inhale leg longer and longer. Or maybe you make the exhale leg longer and longer. Or you find out, what's your favorite triangle? What's a comfortable triangle? Maybe it's 3-3-3 or 4-4-4. Or I don't know, maybe it's 10-10-10 if you've done a lot of practicing. You find out and be honest with yourself. What's a comfortable triangle that you can just relax into and you can maintain for a while? Now you've identified a nice primary breathing rhythm that you can begin to work with and play with. And then maybe I tweak it. Or maybe I see that my triangle is 2-4-2. And so for some reason, my pause is shorter than the other leg. I could make an equilateral triangle, or I could make an isosceles, or I don't know the terms, but I lengthen the inhale leg. I lengthen the exhale leg. I grow the whole triangle. I'm doing breath work, and I don't have a teacher. I don't need a damn teacher. I'm experimenting. I'm exploring. I'm finding where my limits are, and I'm leaning into them. I'm finding the parts that I really love, and I'm going deeper into them. And so I'm already on the path, right? So I suggest people do that. Just play with this triangle breath and morph it and grow it and extend the legs that you feel challenged to extend. And you're in the game. And then I probably would suggest box breathing, because box breathing is inhale, pause, exhale, pause, inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Now I put a deliberate pause where nature really didn't put it. Nature didn't put a pause there. I put a pause there. Now, maybe I have a purpose for putting that pause there. And but what if I have a pause there and it's not natural? In fact, it's there because of pain. It's there because of fear. It's there because of self-doubt. It's there because when I was a little kid and I expressed myself, somebody said, "Oh, go play. Don't be stupid. That's silly. Shut up. Go away. Leave the adults alone." And then I go, and now I hold back my expression. Or pain. If I'm in pain, the breath is literally locked up, blocked by the pain. And not until the pain goes away, the breath can expand and flow again. Or fear. So fear can put a pause where it doesn't belong in the natural cycle of breath. And so when you put the pause there on purpose, you're at least, it's like you're in a plane that's crashing. The best thing you do is at least get control of that plane, and try to like veer it off. You got to get in control of the crash in order to pull yourself out of it. So you put that pause there on purpose, and then you begin to notice when it gets there, like unconsciously, or pain, or fear, or tension, or self-doubt, or not expressing yourself. All those things cause inhibitions in the breathing, right? So then what I do is I'd move into the first real healing practice, and that is circular breathing, where you eliminate the pause before the inhale, after the exhale, and now you just inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. It's like a wheel turning, circular, continuous, connected breathing. And then I would invite people to begin to engage in universal principles like yin and yang, active and passive. So I make my inhale active and my exhale passive. I do the inhale, but I let the breath do the exhale. I do the inhale, I let my body do the exhale. I breathe the inhale, I let the exhale breathe itself. So I'm incorporating a universal principle right from the get-go. And it's continuous. And so I'm actually beginning to merge yin and yang, active and passive, male and female, positive, negative. That's a magical, mystical point where the inhale and the exhale meet. You want to be there, conscious and awake, and then bring them together, create this unity where it's not two separate things, inhale, exhale. It's one thing with two phases. And now I'm moving towards this unity of being, the little white dot in the middle of the black field and the yin yang symbol and vice versa. I'm cracking that code because the breath is giving me the opportunity. It doesn't matter how much I ignore it. For 20 years, the breath just keeps giving me another chance. And when I'm ready and I decide to really wake up, it's waiting for me. And so I would start with the triangle, move to the square, because people like to feel in control. And that's why this practice is so good for first responders, Navy SEALs, because you balance your nervous system. Equal inhale, equal exhale means parasympathetic, sympathetic. You're balancing your nervous system. You're not ramping up more one than the other. You're maintaining a balance. And when you hold your breath at the top, you hold your breath at the bottom, you have this felt organic sense of being in control, because you literally are in control. You just took control away from life, and now you're holding on to it. So you have a felt feeling of being in control. And that's why box breathing, I think, is so powerful for that field. But it's when you want to be in control. When you do this connected breathing, you're controlling the inhale, but you're surrendering the exhale. So now you're starting to put one foot in each world. You're not in control. You're completely surrendering. You're not completely surrendering. You are choosing and acting. So something happens. Something unifies in us. So, then you're ready for coaching, right? Because there are a lot of other principles. Once you get through the rough stuff in the beginning, like infusing every cell, which is one of my favorite principles. So when you breathe in, you spread the energy out to every cell in your body. And you even fill the spaces between the cells. So that the breathing goes beyond the lungs. And it becomes this practice of becoming full body aware. And then when you release the exhale, you get full body relaxation. So you're charging your entire being with every breath. That starts to unlock more energy, more awareness, and so on. And you're getting really good at relaxing. Because if you release the exhale, you can't cheat. I could let the breath out slowly. And it is kind of a relaxing technique. Long, slow exhale. You're letting it out slowly. You're gradually setting. Use pursed lips or use a shushing sound and get a 5-second, 10-second longer exhale. And you feel you're kind of relaxing, settling down, but you're also controlling. You're also holding back. You're not just letting go. You're not just snapping it loose. You're not just setting it free. You're not just dumping it out. You're holding back some of it as you let some of it out. And now just imagine all the psychological and emotional tendencies that could correlate with that kind of breathing pattern, right? Holding things back, blowing and pushing things out, and so on. So you're automatically beginning to learn. It's applying other levels. And then that continuous connected circle, keeping yourself in the game, conscious inhale, deliberate exhale, smooth, connected, they start to merge. And at some point, it's like the breath just starts to take off by itself. And it's like the breath starts to breathe you. And then you don't even have to pull in anymore. Now the breath is breathing you. And it's in that state of being breathed where we have great inspirations, great ahas. That's when things come back into a natural order. That's when the spirit of life comes in and cleans and purges and balances. And you're just going for the ride. You're not even doing it. It's like what you said earlier, that you can do a certain amount, but at some point, like I can get myself to the door of heaven, but I can't kick the door in. I got to be welcomed in from the other side, right? So at some point, every technique becomes an obstacle. Even any breathing technique we do, at some point, the only way forward is just total surrender. And that's so scary for the ego. So we want to be practicing that. Every exhale, you let go. Every exhale, you let go. And you're getting better and better at letting go. And pretty soon, you're starting to let go of things that have not only been holding you back, but holding back the entire human race. And whenever any of us cracks that, it's like that first guy who broke the 4-minute mile. There are people waiting. They just needed to see that it could happen. They just needed to know it was possible. And then, a whole lot of people come through. So I think that's our responsibility, to lift ourselves up, and hopefully a lot of people get sucked in our draft,
Beautifully said, and such an eloquent geometric explanation of a systemized pathway into non-systematic breathing.
A structure into guy who has no structure, right?
Yeah, no, it was a beautiful illustration. Probably, I've listened to and studied breath work, and that was maybe the most eloquent, simplified version of the Stairway to Heaven. So
thank you.
Where can people reach you, find out more about your courses, get your app, all of this side of stuff? Please let us know where they can follow you, find out more, get involved.
Yeah, thank you. Breathmastery.com. I'm on Facebook, Dan Brulé, Breath Mastery. My Instagram is @Dan Brulé Official. It's hard not to find me if you Google breathwork. I've just been, I'm like a bad penny. I just keep popping up everywhere, But yeah, breathmastery.com is a good place to start. And I have a practitioner program, a 1-year training that can be accelerated. It can be extended to 2 years or accelerated to 6 months or even 3 months, depending on how much work you've done. I have an online course called the O2 Fundamentals course. I have my book, of course, Just Breathe. It's got a 21-day challenge in the back of that book. Start anywhere. TheBreathingFestival.com, the International Center for Breathwork. I'm fortunate in the breathing world. A lot of people know me, and I can call up leading breathworkers in the world and convince them to present for nothing, which is what we did with the Breathing Festival. And it's free right now. You can go to thebreathingfestival.com and you can watch 55. James Nestor, Mark Devine that you mentioned, Patrick McEwen, and Judith. All the leading voices in the breathing world, they all took part. They're taking part in our Breathing Festival. That's a good place to go because we are smarter than me. But breathmastery.com, I think that's the place to start.
Dan, this is such an awesome interview, and I know so many people are going to love it. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. For me, it was just absolutely pure joy to see the transmission of your awareness and the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for joining us. I know all of our listeners will really be excited about this, and I hope many of them will continue on and learn from you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, brother, thank you. And you too. I mean, I've heard about you through other friends for long, and man, you are one of those people that's making a real difference in the world. And those are people I like to serve and I like to help. And so thank you for everything you're doing, brother. Really, thank you.
Appreciate it. And for those who are listening, of course, check out Dan Brulé, Breath Mastery. All of the links will be included here in the show notes. And take the time to invest in breathwork. I don't know of anything that can have a more profound effect. And Dan shared with us so many great things today. Don't just listen to it, practice it, because the power is in the practice. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm Wei T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Just breathe.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar, live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.